Welcome back. So in this lesson, we're going to pick up right where we left off, and we're going to see how do we chain together simpler Boolean statements like the ones we just saw into more complicated statements that have multiple components. So they're still all going to evaluate to be true or false at the end of the day, but there might be multiple pieces that individually evaluate to be true or false before the entire thing becomes true or false. So there are three logical operators. And like we said, this is basically a way to chain together Boolean logic. So those three are called and, or, and not. So we're going to start by talking about and. And the way that and works, first of all, you write it with two ampersands. And you can see right here, we're using it in an example where x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 9. So and takes two sides. There's a left side and a right side, and goes in the middle. So the way you would read this is x less than 10 and x not equal to 5. So we'll evaluate both sides. X is less than 10. That is true. 5 is less than 10. X is not equal to 5, and that is false. So we end up with true and false. And the way that and works is that it requires both sides to be true. It requires both of them to be true, left and right, and that's not true in this case. Only the left side is true, so the entire thing is false. The way that or works is slightly different. It still takes both sides, but it only requires that one of them be true, left or right be true, in order for the whole thing to be true. Just a side note, the character here, the pipe character, is located above most people's enter or return key, and you usually need to hit shift to make it work. So two of those is how you write or in JavaScript. So the left side, y is greater than 9. That is not true because y is 9. Or x is triple equal to 5, which is true. X is 5. So we end up with false or true, which evaluates to be true overall because or only requires one side to be true. Lastly, we have not. And the way that not works is a little bit different. It doesn't take a left or a right side. It just negates or flips the value of whatever we apply it to. So if something was true and we put a not in front of it, it then becomes false. If something was false and we put a not in front of it, it then becomes true. So in this case, the expression x triple equals y, which is false. 5 is not equal to 9. So the inside is false, but there's a bang or a not in front of it, which negates the whole thing and turns it to be true. So let's go ahead and give this a shot with a quick exercise. So below there are 3 lines of code. We have a variable x set to be 10, a variable y equal to the string a, and then a short expression here that is using or in the middle. So go ahead and evaluate this yourself. Don't just copy and paste it into the console. We'll go over a solution. So just try and predict what the outcome is, if it is true or false, based off of what we've covered so far. Okay. So this exercise, if we plug in 10 for x and the string a for y, let's start on the left. String a triple equals the string b. That is not true. Or x is greater than or equal to 10, which is true because x is 10. So we have false or true, which gives us, of course, true. And we could definitely evaluate this over in the console just to verify our work. Just hit enter, and you'll see that we get true. So one more exercise here. This time, it's a little bit longer, but it's the same basic components. So resist the temptation just to type it into your console. Make sure you plug in 3 for x and 8 for y, and see if you can figure out if the whole expression is true or false. Okay, so hopefully you did that. Let's go over the answer now. So as I do this, let's start by identifying the overall pattern here. So we've got a left side and a right side with an and in the middle. So we need both of these to be true. So let's start with the left side. We have x is 3, y is 8. So this first line, x, which is 3, the number, double equals 3, the string, that is true because it's double equals. Or, and this is a small point here, but technically, if the left side of an or statement is already true, that means the entire OR statement is true. JavaScript doesn't even care what's over here. It's called short circuiting because we only need 1 out of 2 to be true, and if we already get that on the left, then we're done. But just to evaluate this for more practice, x triple equals y is false, 3 is not the same as 8. So this whole thing evaluates to true. However, there's also a bang here, so that negates the whole thing to be false. And just like before, this actually short circuits the entire expression because we have an and here. And if the left side is false, that means the entire and must be false because we're looking for 2 out of 2. And if we've already missed 1 and this is false, then it doesn't matter what's over here. So the whole thing is false. But just to verify that, let's go over to this side. So we have an and in the middle. Y is not equal to 8. That is false. And we have an and in the middle. So that short circuits one more time this entire thing, because if we have the left side is already false, then it doesn't matter what the right side is. But just to double check once again, x less than or equal to y, 3 is less than or equal to 8, that is true. So we end up with false and true, which is false, and then we negate that whole thing, so that gives us true. So we have false and true. So that evaluates to be false. And just to double check, you can paste this into the console, and if we do that, we get false. So we have one last thing to cover here, which is this idea that every value in JavaScript is inherently truthy or falsy. So aside from the obvious booleans true and false, which are clearly true or false, every other value has this inherent truthiness or falsiness that JavaScript assigns them. So I'm going to open up my console and just show you a way of finding this out. So if I just want to know if a string hello is truthy or falsy, if I just type the string and hit enter, it's just going to give me the string back. So what I can do is actually put it in a Boolean statement, and the simplest one is just to negate it. So if I negate the string hello and I get true back, that tells me that the string hello is falsy because I negated it. Likewise, if I get false back, that tells me that the string hello is truthy. And I do get false, which means that the string hello is truthy. The other thing that I can do is double negate it, which will flip it and then flip it back and tell me, whoops, that it's truthy. And likewise, I can do the same thing on an empty string, and we'll see that an empty string is actually falsy. Same thing with null, 0, not a number, and when we do -1, you'll see that it's actually truthy. So these are things that in some languages behave a little bit differently. So just because in JavaScript -1 is truthy, that does not mean that in other languages it is automatically truthy. So here's a quick recap. The hard rule is that the values false, 0, empty string, null, undefined, and not a number are always falsy, and everything else is truthy. So we have one last exercise here, which is just like the others, except now it's testing truthiness and falsiness. So 3 strings, an empty string, the string haha, and the string false. Evaluate this. Don't just run in the console. We'll go over a solution. Plug in the values mentally and see what you come up with. Is the whole thing true or is the whole thing false? Okay, so the answer here, let's plug in string, message, and is funny. So you'll notice that we have an or and something else. So let's go ahead and solve this first or on the left. So we have str or string, which is an empty string, which is falsy. So false or the string haha, which is truthy. So false or true, which gives us true for this little section here. Then we have true and is funny, which is the string false, which is a little tricky, but the string false, you could always double check, is truthy. So that tells me that true and true is true. And the last thing I have to do is negate the entire thing, which will give me false. So just to verify that, we can copy this answer, and I get false. Great. So in the next section, we're actually going to see how we make decisions in JavaScript using these Boolean logic expressions that we've just talked about. How do we run some code if something is false? How do we run some other code if something is true?